Hey there, it's Mark from Men Who Bullet. Make sure you follow me on Instagram at Men Who Bullet and also on my website and blog, menwhobullet.com. So in today's video, we are making the switch. That's right, we are switching over between bullet journal number 5, which has 3 pages left. I don't know how I made it that far with only 3 pages left, but I did, and it ends almost perfectly with the end of the month so that I can start up a brand new journal in August, which is very new because it's square and I've never used this size before and I don't know what I'm getting into, but we will be finding out. I'm looking at it as a challenge. I've never used a square journal before. This one is 8 by 8 inches and it is from Archer and Olive. Now, if you've ever used their journals, they are really fantastic. And what they really tout, not just about being a fantastic small business and also eco-friendly, but their paper is really nice. It's 160 GSM paper, and the reason I love it is because you don't get any bleed through or any ghosting. So every page you turn over is a fresh new page, and I really, really like that. Now, the one thing that Archer and Olive notebooks don't have that others do are pre-numbered pages, and some of those other journals also have an index already built into them. So if you go with one of these journals, just know that you'll be creating that from scratch, and that's okay because that's exactly what today's video is going to be all about. Now, I'll be sizing this specifically for an 8 by 8, but all of the same foundational things that we talk about in today's video can go for any size journal. It doesn't matter what type, what brand, what size. Foundationally, it's all the same. So let's go ahead and get started. Bullet journal number 6, the square journal. All right, so let's go ahead and start doing this. Now, before we start moving things over, what I wanted to show you here was a spread that I made up, and I've used these in the past to really help me know what's coming and what's going. So the way that I set up this list is pretty straightforward. Everything that's coming with me into my new bullet journal goes in a list over here on the left, and then everything that's not coming with me or things that I don't want to repeat are over here on the right-hand side. So things coming with me, since I usually use this bullet journal for a lot of work things, I have my one-on-ones. Now this will only be my team that I'm currently managing. We did have some change up recently, so my group went from like 12 down to 6, which is fantastic for focus. So I'm excited about being able to bring about half the amount of pages over with me here. When it comes to my meetings, so I'm only bringing over my reoccurring meetings. So these are ones that I have either weekly or bi-weekly, some of them monthly, but are really important to make sure that I have as I kick off my new journal. Now for my collection, so these varied, but I wanted to go through and I went through a whole edit of my current bullet journal to understand what I wanted to bring with me. So some things that are coming with me will be an Instagram and a YouTube tracker. I have a current Instagram tracker in my number 5 journal here, but it was too large. I was aiming for the stars and I didn't hit it before I finished out the bullet journal, which is totally okay. But I'm going to be creating a new Instagram tracker and a new YouTube tracker in the future. I won't cover them in this video because I want it not to be an hour and a half long, but I will definitely have one of those in the near future for you. I also have a vacation tracker that I've been using just to keep track of things at work, so that's been helpful. And then I have some notes for a handful of projects that I'm working on. Now the things that are not going to be coming over with me. So I have a really cool, and I really love it, an Animal Crossing friends list, but I'm pretty deep into the game now. I don't need to know everyone who's new. I'm used to it, so that's not going to come over with me. I mentioned the Instagram tracker. I was tracking, I believe, thousands instead of like hundreds, and I wasn't able to reach my 20,000 goal, which is okay. I got to 12,000, which is very fantastic, but it's very large. And I honestly don't think I'm going to be able to go from 12,000 to 20,000 in 6 to 8 months. So that won't be coming with me. I also have some notes from some other meetings that I had that I'm not either attending anymore or that aren't really necessary. I'm not bringing over any of my non-direct reports with my one-on-ones. Like I mentioned, a lot of those have switched to different leaders now. For my different doodle challenges, I'm actually going to keep them in a separate notebook. And the main reason why is that I'll probably be working remote for a while now. I don't know if I will be the entire time that I'm in my current notebook, but since I'm at home, I have access to my other notebook. So I'm not going to bring those into this current journal, but I will have my last one in here. And then I also need monthly pages without tasks and events. So this is more of a what didn't work for me. So I've done a monthly intro page before with like a small calendar, but it was not very useful for me. So I've decided that moving forward, at least in this new journal, I'm not going to be doing those. I'll have a monthly intro page, but I'm going to focus on goals and priorities and tasks, along with a calendar and some other things that might be helpful for me as I go into each month. So we're going to use this as a way to think about how we're introducing our new journal. Now, before I do that, I do want to think about the pages that I'm going to need for this. So under my one-on-ones, I have 6 total right now. So what I'm going to do is actually split each of those in half. Since my pages are 8 by 8, they're pretty wide, wider than these journals are here. They're about as wide as this page is technically long. So I'm going to split each of these into halves. So to get started, each of those individuals will share one full page. Now for my meetings, this is a little bit different. I was thinking through how I use notes inside of these meetings, because that's the whole point of these collection pages for these individual meetings. So as I'm going through, so my design lead team meeting, we take notes, but not a whole lot really come out of that. So I think for this one, I'm going to give that half a page to get started. My weekly creative, that's my weekly team meeting I have, so that's really important. I keep a lot of notes there on what's going on. For my bi-weekly show and tells, that's a lot of talking and showing the work, but not a lot of notes necessarily, maybe a few, so I'll give that half a page. My monthly all hands meeting that we have, again, sometimes there's a good amount of notes, sometimes there's not, so I'll give that a half a page to start. My design community, a lot of action happening over the next 6 to 8 months, so that'll have a full page to get started. And then conversations with my senior PO, similar to one-on-ones, but I wanted to break it out a bit differently, taking up half a page. So if we look at this, this will be 1, 2, 3, 4 pages that I'll use for this. So I will probably start with this as my first page, and then I'll probably combine these two to be my another page here, and then I'll just keep that pattern going. A whole page for the design community, and then I'll mix these. So these will be 4 pages here that we'll start to use. This will be 3 pages that we'll start to use. And then with some of these, I'm just gonna mark them. For this project, I'm going to use these Nomad stickies from Baronfig. If you're interested in any of the Baronfig products, don't forget you can actually use my discount code, menwhobullet, to get 10% off any of their products. But I'm gonna be using these just to kind of mark down kind of what I think the page will look like. And then again, in future videos, we'll do more with that. All right, so now that we have this, let's go ahead and put this over to the side, and let's go ahead and introduce bullet journal number 6. All right, it's my book. This is mine. I'm very excited for this. So I've gone ahead and started a handful of pages just because I want to make sure that we're not spending a ton of time you watching me draw these in. If that's something that you like, please let me know in the comments below if you really like to watch me draw. But otherwise, I got a few things started, but I'm gonna be filling these in though with you and talking about them. All right, so to start off, we're gonna start with the key. So the way that this notebook works is that you have your intro page here. The next page over was a blank page, and then it started with the dotted pages here on the left-hand side, which makes sense. Now, the way that I use my bullet journal is usually starting with an index, but I also like to start my page numbers like a book. So my first page number will be in the bottom right-hand corner of this page here on the right-hand side. So what I've done here is I'll have a place for my key on that blank page. My index will take up 2 pages, and then my future log will be where I start my very first page. So let's go ahead and fill in the key. So everyone has a different type of key that they like to use. For me, I have kind of stuck with the same thing for a while. I found what works. I have definitely found what doesn't. So let me share with you what works for me. So the first thing that I always get started with are the tasks. The most important part of what we're doing here, being productive and knowing what's going on. Okay, the next thing in here is going to be when a task is complete, one of the most amazing feelings ever. The next one for me are going to be notes. And I may have mentioned this before, but I remember when I first used these dash lines, it was the hardest thing to remember that a dash was for a note, not a bullet, as sometimes we do in other notebooks or when you're writing. The next for me is going to be events. I use these a lot for meetings, appointments, and things of that nature. Obviously, going out right now isn't something that we're able to do because of COVID, but if I have other things going on like meetings or webinars or even virtual coffee talks. I'll put them in there as events inside of my bullet journal. The next one is my signifier, which I use for things that are important. You can also use an asterisk or something else like that, but I always use an exclamation point. It always lets me know you need to pay attention to this. All right. The next one here is for canceled events. So this is anything that I had either going on, whether it was a task that does not need to be completed anymore. It could be an event that is no longer happening. You just cross it out. The next one here is going to be the migration forward. So any task or event that I need to take to my following week, I go ahead and use this indicator once I've actually migrated it to my next week. That's fun. We'll get rid of that later. And the last one that we're going to put on here is the migrate backwards. So as I'm creating notes or events or anything that I'm writing down in my weeklies, I use this signifier to let me know that I'm actually going to take that back to my future log. I also like to say back to my future log because I'm a dork. All right, so here we go. So we have our tasks, our completed tasks, our notes, any events, important information or tasks that I need to make sure I'm remembering. Anything that's canceled gets crossed out. This is for migrating things forward to my next week. This is migrating back to my future log. All right, the index. Now the index, I call the index the brain of this entire operation because without the index, you don't know where anything is. So as we're going through this, I'll actually be coming back and forth between my pages and the index because each page and its content get written on here. Every single page does. But first, we need a header. Dot those I's. Now, as you can see here, I did go in with some pencil earlier on. I just think it's really important always to use pencil first, and that way sometimes your spacing can be off, or maybe you're doing something tricky with your letters. You can always go back and erase later. Even over on my key, you can see I had some lines here. I wanted to make sure that they were as straight as possible, and then I'll go back with an eraser to get rid of that. So our index is here. Let's go ahead and flip over. I've got the index on the second page. Again, because these pages are wider than they are inside of those normal bullet journals, I'm going ahead and just splitting this out. You know, my indexes for the most part were not super long, so I can easily condense that down a little bit and be okay. All right, so the future log. So the future log, when I first started bullet journaling, was probably the most interesting thing to try to think about. Like, how in the world do you use this thing to help you plan for the future? And really what it is anything that you're using that migrate back indicator for goes inside of here. Also, it's for pre-planning. So if I have an event that is coming up in the future, I put it on here. Birthdays are really fantastic ways to use these as well, or anything that you need to remember for the future as you start to set up each individual month. And it's a process, right? You're going to need to come back to your future log before setting up your monthly log. It's just that simple, and it's the best way to think about how you use this process. So again, this gets a header. I'm not gonna fill out any of this right now for this video. Again, there's a lot of different events and things going on that I need to recheck my other calendars for. And I'd hate to mess up a birthday and have someone get mad at me. So we'll fill it up in the future. But let's cross that T. Important to make sure that we have this set up now. Now, the very first thing that I'm gonna do, since this is page 1 of my new bullet journal, welcome, is go ahead and add the future log to the index. So what I'll do here, pretty simple, what's the page number that it's on? I also like to leave room because some of your collections are gonna span multiple pages. That's just the reality of how this thing works. So we'll go ahead and put in future log. There we go. Page number 1 is complete. All right. Now, when we flip this over, I've gone ahead and filled these out. So these are actually going to be my one-on-one pages. So what I'll do is after this video, I'll go in and put the individuals' names. I'll bring over any notes from their one-on-ones that we've had recently to continue here. But what I'll at least do for now is put in the titles. This is the first time that I've split pages. Obviously, it just has to do with the fact that I'm in a completely different journal that has a much different size and it calls for it. In the past, all of my one-on-ones have been on individual pages. And again, bullet journals evolve with you, so it's important to make sure that you have that. And we'll see how it goes, and if it doesn't work, I won't do this in the future. All right, so we talked about before some of those other pages, so I'm just going to go through how I'm going to get this started, and then we'll have a whole separate video for setting up the monthly beginner log as well as your weekly spread. So the first thing that's going to go inside of this page I talked about was going to be my weekly creative meeting. Right? And I'm pretty sure the way that I'll probably set up this page is similar to the others, is having a title here, and then I'll probably split it in half or do something cool, but so that I can go ahead and have two separate sides of this meeting. Something else I've been thinking about is instead of actually creating a line, maybe just like creating like a dot or something in the middle of the page to let me know that's where that is. It'll just be like an invisible line, but that way I can have these two separate pages here. All right, then we talked over here, we were gonna do a design lead meeting as well as the bi-weekly. So for this, I'll probably keep it very similar, is I'll create the two headlines here, divide it here, and then I'll go ahead and have that design lead meeting and also the bi-weekly. All right. Then we'll go ahead and switch things up. So instead of splitting out this page, this will be the whole page that we do for the design community. For the design community meeting. And similarly, I'll probably just do one header inside of here and then start my notes out in here. Okay. All right, now for this page, this is actually going to be the last split page. So this is going to be the monthly meeting that I have for my business unit. And then it's also going to be senior PO. And I'll create some different headers for that. And then this page over here is going to be my Instagram and YouTube tracker. That'll be a whole separate video because I have some really cool ideas for what I want to do with this. And who knows, I might actually put it on its side instead. Maybe I'll just switch it up a little bit and create some of those angles, and we'll work through what each of these trackers looks like. All right. And then this is where I'm going to do our future videos. So this is where I'm going to do our first monthly layout. And this will be for August. And then I think for my very first week, I'm going to just do a one-page weekly spread. Now, the last thing that I want to show you on here is actually something I put in the very back of this journal. So in the front of every journal that I have, I usually keep a Post-it note or something that lets me know the spacing of the squares on the page. I didn't do that this time because what I included inside of this book is a little bit more of a graphic, letting me know that it's 37 squares up and 30 squares over. There's 38 dots, so if it's like that's a weird kind of uneven measurement here, it's that the dots are 38, but each of the individual squares here are 37. And the reason I use that instead of the dots is because that's how I usually set up my grids. I usually set it up inside of boxes. So I set it up so I have, on this one, 18 dots across for one box, one space in between, and then 18 across. And that gives me 2 columns. I also have 3 different ways that I could do 3 columns here. 2 different ways for the 4 columns. I've got one way for a 5, and I've got another way for a 6. Now, anywhere where you see a lot of space here, that could be shifted a little bit.
And the other part I really like about having a square journal, which I didn't realize until just a little bit ago, is that I can also turn this sideways, and this will actually give me rows. So I'm really excited about this because that's usually where I spend a lot of time, is thinking about, well, how many spaces do I need to create what size rows for what I need? So now it'll be really easy that I can just open this up if I need to and change things a little bit and be like, oh, okay, this month has 5 weeks in it or 4 weeks in it, and easily set those up across. And then the only thing that I'll need is just to create either a Saturday, Sunday split for the 6, or I'll come up with a 7, or I'll have to go across 2 pages. But either way, this is in the back for me to resource anytime I need to, and I'm really excited about that. I haven't figured out all of the page numbers yet. I'll start to probably do the first 50 or so now, just to get them all in order, and then move each of these over into my future log. So we'll have a future video that I won't be putting in my future log, but I'll be putting it in a different journal that's going to go over the setup of some of those other collection pages. But everything we have here, pretty straightforward. Bullet journal number 6. We have our key. We have our index, which is going to keep all of the different pages and the contents of each of those pages as we go through. Create 2 pages for that. We have the future log. This is where all of your future events go to, or where you migrate back events and notes from weeklies into here to plan for the future. Then I also set up my one-on-one pages with each of my team members. And then we've gone ahead and noted for the type of meetings that we're going to have. 1 full page for creative weekly meetings, a split page for these 2 meetings, another full meeting page, split, and then my Instagram and YouTube tracker, we're actually going to do a horizontal layout for that. And then those last pages are going to be the monthly and my 1 first page weekly for the month of August, which I will be doing in future videos. And then in the back, like I was just showing, I have my grid layout and spacing, my cheat sheet, so to say, of how we're going to be using this.
All right, bullet journal number 6 is ready to go. Thank you so much for checking out today's video. Now, if you liked this one and want to see more, make sure to subscribe below and also give it a thumbs up. That lets me know that you like what's going on, and I can create more videos just like this. Also, coming up in the near future, I'll have some personal organization videos to help you through working at home or anywhere that you are. And next month, I'm really excited because we'll be starting to go through old bullet journals. And I'll be going all the way back to the very first one from 2017 and talking about what worked, what didn't work, and what I've learned over each of these bullet journals. So it'll be a trip, that's for sure. Thank you so much again for checking out this video, and I'll talk to you all soon.